Hello everyone, this is Walter Hazard, and welcome to episode 3 of Director's Commentary, where I'll be talking about the well-received cinematic, The Seventh Sense. Before I talk about the shots and all that good stuff, I want to go over the principles and rules I had made in order to make the cinematic even possible. I'll also be talking about the inspirations and all that good stuff. This, of course, began with an idea. I've always had a cool idea for a cinematic sequence where two guardians were pitted against each other and forced to fight. At the time, I didn't even see two hunters, just two classless guardians fighting. And in my mind, back then, I saw it happening on Twilight Gap at Alpha Spawn, I believe. And I thought, there would be enough room for these two classes to battle it out. But as the idea became more complex and a little bit convoluted, I said, let's just keep things simple. And so I did more location scouting, and lo and behold, Icarus, one of the new Rise of Iron maps at the time, was the perfect candidate. And I'm not just talking about Bravo Spawn, where most of the cinematic takes place, but the whole map had spots I wanted to include into the idea that I was building. So, we're following two guardians, and we're on Icarus. Okay, we got the meat, but where are the potatoes? And what I mean by that is that I didn't just want to do another generic action cinematic where we see two hunters fighting because, ooh, yay, that would look cool. I wanted there to be a reason for it, a reason for everything. And that in itself took a good month or so to figure out. When working on these types of projects, there's one important thing you have to consider, and that is scaling your idea. You can have the coolest thing in your mind, but you have to apply those ideas to the boundaries of the game and work your way towards it. Now, I didn't have a lot of issues like that, but it's important to keep that in mind when a fresh idea is born. Working within the boundaries from the get-go saves you from doing a lot of tweaking or even scrapping your concept altogether. But in the end, I settled on revolving the narrative around a gun and the classes we have in Destiny. But there had to be one main class and one weapon I had to focus on, and I started with choosing the Hunter, mainly for two reasons. One, I am a hunter at heart, and two, I felt that if I were to represent a class, it would have to be a class I'm the most comfortable with. As for the weapon, I knew that the sniper rifle was the go-to weapon for the hunter, but which one in particular, I didn't know yet, but we'll get to that later. But back to the whole hunter thing. In many ways, I see myself as a hunter in real life. When I'm not making videos or working on stuff, I'm outside, either going on a walk or just biking off into the unknown. Not just because I want to get lost, but I have this pure need for exploration. I want to see what's out there and tell stories about it and be inspired. What Kate 6 says in the Vanguard armor sets for hunters explains the whole exploration / sharing stories thing perfectly, I think. The Gauntlet's flavor text says, "Just come back with a good story, you hear?" Kate 6. The chest flavor text says, "I don't even care if it's a true story. So long as it's good, I'm a happy hunter." Kate 6. And the cloak's flavor text says, "A hunter back from a quest? Now that's the best storyteller in the galaxy." Kate 6. So it all comes back to returning from journeys and sharing those tales. That's just something hunters do. And, with that in mind, I just felt right at home with that theme, Next up, I had to find a way to visually and audibly tell that even though we can see all the classes, we're focusing on the hunter class, and the hunter we're supporting in the actual cinematic is the main character. So I started writing some stuff for hunters, titans, and warlocks and realized, so where does the gun part come in all of this? To add to this, I didn't even know what gun I was going to feature, so there was that dilemma as well. A couple of days passed, and I ended up going for the Vanguard Quartermaster Sniper Rifle, the Seventh Sense, because it had a very captivating flavor text which goes as follows. "It's difficult to explain, but if you have it, you'll know." And after I had read it, I just knew how I wanted to make it. Every other problem I had with the narrative was just gone. And so I started rewriting. I repurposed the lines I was going to say, the shot list saw some change for sure, and generally a lot of adjustments were made to the overall script, but it were good and positive changes. And it also helped me lay out the groundwork for this project in its entirety, so I made some rules and principles. 1. Make sure that the video is not longer than 2 minutes. 2. Briefly talk about the classes but focus on the hunter and the seventh sense. 3. Have memorable scenes and shots. And 4. Just make it awesome. That was literally it. Obviously it was easier said than done, but I really wanted to incorporate those rules into the cinematic. And now that we have that out of the way, I think we can finally talk about the cinematic itself. The cinematic opens up with a very angry Satch chasing down Tatter. This shot was actually going to be scrapped because when we shot this, the structure of the cinematic at the time was completely different. But I kept it in to kind of smooth out the future scenes with these characters, so that when you see the Blade Dancer pop his super, you might figure out that, oh, it was that guy from the beginning, you know? And then we get that crispy title screen over there. The second shot shows Banshee's arsenal of weapons. It's accompanied with some narration saying that the Vanguard Armory offers unique playstyles. There wasn't really a big reason as to why I said Vanguard Armory. I thought that, well, the Seventh Sense is a Vanguard weapon, so it makes sense, right? That was literally the reason. So now we're moving on to the classes and their weapons, starting off with the Titan, who was played here by Tatter. The Warlock on the opposite side was played by Satch. The original idea for this one was a lot different, and I think it's still cooler, though. Basically, we'd be on Skyline, and the Titan would be rushing towards B and literally shotgun 4 people to death. And the way I had imagined it too was insane. Like, I'd be like switching to first person and third person and try different angles, but of course, as we got closer to the deadline, I didn't really have a lot of people to shoot with, right? So I decided to go for the simplified route and rewrote the scene. And as you can see, we're on Blind Watch, and I'd say the main concept is still there. The Titan is still doing what he does best and looks badass doing it too, so yeah. Looking back though, I wish I was a bit more vocal on the recruiting actors matter, but what can you do? Moving on to the Warlocks, we're changing up the temperature from the red sands of Mars to the blizzards of Felwinter Peak, and I thought going for a stark contrast not only between classes or weapons would be good, but also the setting would make the changing classes thing a lot more presentable and entertaining to watch. And there's just something about the first shot of the Warlock where we see his boots and as he's like walking forward, that just looks menacing and awesome. I mean, it's not every day you get to see a Warlock taking on a bunch of Fallen and looking badass doing it. I mean, this Warlock was played by Satch, by the way, who did an amazing job. And now that I think about it as well, I realized that I was really trying to give the Titan and the Warlock the spotlight they deserve because, the main focus was hunters and all that stuff. So I made sure that, at least the Titan and Warlock, had a presence there. So, yeah. But yeah, finally we got the Hunter. And now, another way to once more emphasize that we're focusing on hunters was to reveal in a way that the narrator is also a hunter. From Felwinter Peak, we go to Twilight Gap, and this map was chosen kind of as a callback to the early days of this project. If you notice where the hunter is positioned, you'll see that he's at Alpha Spawn, the spot where the hunters were originally going to fight. In the end, though, it looked better with just having one person in the shot, and Satch, who played the hunter in this scene, just killed it. And it's really one thing I appreciated when working on the scenes for the cinematic. I mean, the actors were also editors, with the exception of Tasha, of course. But when I told Tad or Satch to perform an action, may that be switching guns or walking forward or wherever, they would know exactly how to do it, because they, as talented editors, also have experience in directing their own actors when they're working on their edits and all that good stuff. So it was very, very nice to get stuff done with them because they understood now the Icarus part of the cinematic. The transition from all that classes talk to sniper rifle talk was actually very easy because I had already matched the hunter with snipers, so all I had to do was specify bit by bit what sniper I was talking about, starting with the ammo. The shots that accompanied with that featured Tad doing some cool, shooting and reloading stuff. And the way to not make it too stale was to include a sneaky first-person shot where, you see me reloading with the completely wrong armor, but hey, it all happened so fast, so I bet any of you guys probably saw that, so Yeah. A funny story about that last shot though. I ran out of B-roll footage for that one scene, and the shot that I was going to use was cut short, so I said, you know what, screw it. Time warp, where you at? Slowing down that shot was either going to be problematic or it was going to look very smooth, and I was scared it was going to look bad because the warping that was going on with all the flames on his arms. But somehow it magically ended up working perfectly, and yeah, so there's that. After all these scenes, which were mostly medium shots and close-ups, I had to make sure that the viewer had some breathing room. I mean, you can't just keep shooting medium shots and close-ups because it suffocates the viewer and causes this sort of claustrophobia effect. So I went wide, and this shot does two things at once, three even. One, it confirms exactly where we are on Icarus, which is Bravo spawn. 2, we're going wide and we see both characters. 3, and most importantly, we now know who the hunter was looking at in the last shot. I mean, of course, some people might have already figured it out by now because of the first shot of the cinematic, but yeah, I mean, it really is all about continuity and making sure that things are kept relevant. As we move on, things start to heat up, really, as the Blade Dancer pops his super, and on the narrating side of things, we're talking about how the sniper rifle is more than just another gun. It stimulates your senses and facilitates your job, which is to neutralize. And with that in mind, the Night Stalker does one of the most epic things I've ever seen. Granted, there are more cool things I could imagine doing of this scale in Destiny, but this right here is probably one of my favorite moments in the cinematic because it's all about the Night Stalker trusting his senses and waiting for his prey to make a move, not even using his shadow shot, whereas the Blade Dancer rushes for the kill with his razor edge attack. Like, maybe it's just me, but there's so much more than just oh wow, he avoided the razor edge attack, you know? Like, it's about, to me personally, it's about exploring those fundamentals of these subclasses and intertwining them with their iconic features and cultures. The Blade Dancer is very aggressive, he rushes for the kill, and Night Stalkers, they're hunters. They stalk their prey and wait for the right moment to attack. But if you guys didn't see that, it's completely fine, you know? It's one of the many reasons why I make these cinematics. It's to improve and improve and improve. Anyway, shooting this was tricky because the shot where you see the Night Stalker shade stepping from, you know, the first person POV, it was a pain to get right. I just kept on dying when Tasha was attacking me. Luckily though, on the editing side, I could just easily cut to the shot where Tatter evaded that without breaking a sweat. But we made it so that when Sach came in for Tasha, he would just kind of direct his attack a bit more to the right so that Tad could just evade it more easily. So essentially, I shot it twice. I shot that one scene twice. So one where the razor edge goes in a straight line and pretty much just kills me, and another where it slightly goes to the right and Tad has a bit more, you know, a bit more freedom in, you know, shade stepping to the right. And you can still see that there's a stark contrast between these two hunters. The Night Stalker is calm and it shows with the very calm and serene shot, and the Blade Dancer is aggressive, and so the shot is shaky and frantic as he runs towards him. And ultimately, the Blade Dancer's blind fury also ends up being his temporary demise as he drops to his knees. And I remember back in the early days of this project where I was thinking of the Blade Dancer dying, so I messed around with like the death animations, but it just didn't work out. Not until I found the sorrow emote, and just like that, you know, a few doors had opened. Of course, at the time, only certain people had access to it, and luckily Tasha had it. So to be safe, we shot this pretty early on during our sessions. And that's pretty much it. I would like to thank Sach, Tasha, and Tat for helping me make this project come to life. And I want to thank Sach and Tat specifically because their synergy on set was just perfect. They knew exactly how stuff needed to be done. Anyway, that's enough gushing for me. I realized this was a very long episode, but there was so much out there that I just could not leave out. I mean, if you're gonna want an explanation on why I did certain things the way I did them in the cinematic, then you're gonna get some thorough answers for sure. And to those who made it through the end, comment down below. It's difficult to explain, but if you have it, you'll know. But that's it for me, guys. If you guys liked the video, consider giving it a like. If you guys didn't like it, well, you can always give it a dislike. But in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching this long ass video. I've been Walter Hazard. Enjoy your day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.